everyone, welcome to another episode of the Bookmore Show. Stuart here with Betsy. Betsy Vaughan, how's it going?
Super great, wonderful. How are you?
Good, thank you. Super great and wonderful. That's a good end to the week.
Right. I couldn't remember what day it was actually, because I would have said like happy, and then all of a sudden I stopped and went, I don't even know what day it is. So
yeah, I must admit, I flew down yesterday, and this is just a short trip. I need to come down for a meeting last night and today. So I'm going back again in the morning and then back down next week. So I'm completely discombobulated on the day.
Yeah, I get it.
What
are we going to talk about today?
So today we are going to dive in and look at a slightly different type of book than the ones we usually talk about. So I grabbed a book that I've been meaning to read for a couple of weeks, and I've actually taken it back and forth home for the last couple of trips. So kind of over breakfast this morning, I grabbed it and thought, well, I'm definitely going to read this now because I knew that I wanted to. But it actually turned out to be something completely different than I was expecting. So I was expecting some lead generation type book, which is what we often talk about. But what it turned out to be was more of a cultural book about the organisation. We've had, over the years, we've had several of these. I mean, the ones that spring to mind, we've probably mentioned them a couple of times on the show before. So Robin Estevez has got Stories from Behind the Counter, a book about their organisation going from a small bodega that their parents owned through to, I think they've got 6 or 7 Foodtown stores now up in New York. So stories about the culture there. There's Kevin Craig, who we've definitely mentioned before, because of the unexpected success and kind of spin-off coaching career that he's really amplified based on his book. And his book was more about his background and some of the starting questions that he was able to answer in his business, and that people then subsequently asked him over and over again. And then this book, Culture Shock, is more for employees of the organization. So coming in and talking about how to thrive in the organization, what the corporate values are, or the culture of the organization is, why they're a little bit different. So as I was looking at it, it seemed like a good time to jump on and run through that type, because well, I should ask you, when you're talking to people, how often do people come with that type of idea?
You know, it's interesting because had you not said, oh, let's talk about this, the minute we started talking about it or thinking about talking about it, some popped in my mind, you know, people doing that internal kind of an employee handbook, but more of a guide, you know, like here's the new employee kind of thing. And this is sort of, like you said, about our culture. This is what we do. This is how we do things. This is how we expect it. We did another one, and I'm kind of going through the gallery right now to hopefully trigger something in my mind to remember. But it was one of our financial guys, and it was sort of like, hey, you're new to our, not just, you know, our company, but new to the entire industry. Right. And so these are some expectations because I was you once, and this is what you need to know, you know? So, I mean, how awesome is that?
Well, I wish someone would have told me.
Yeah,
you can imagine being the person on the receiving end of it as well. I mean, it's something that encapsulates all of the things that are important enough for the business owner to write down, even not just getting the kind of the view on the culture, but getting it straight from the horse's mouth. What out of all of the cultural elements, what are the important ones that I felt the need to actually get down on a in writing here and give to you? It's really a kind of an X-ray into the owner's mind. And
it is, and you know where it's different. Where it's different from like the employee handbook or the company handbook or guide or what have you, is I remember in one of these books, and maybe even with this other one that I'm looking for, there were very true stories. Like, this is what happened to me. And that's far more interesting to read, you know, than that typical, here, you've got to read this 60-page manual on the company. You know, I mean, that's obviously those have their benefits as well. But, you know, it's kind of like, I mean, to put real life stories in place.
When I think about the books I read, these days I don't
you
read.
Get to read books?
Well, just going to say, these days I don't read that many. I used to have an Audible subscription, so I'd listen to them a lot more, but kind of podcasts kind of supplanted audiobooks. but even then, when I think back to the books I'll typically gravitate towards, it's more biographies and real life stories. For exactly the point you said, it's more engaging. One of the other ones was what was the UK the not campsite, but and like a mobile park across there has a different meaning than a mobile home park across here. But there was one from the UK that was very much cultural based in the story about how the organisation came up. There was Chris Hill wrote one with an organisation that they worked with pretty closely, talking about their story.
Okay, that's really a great book. I mean, that I enjoyed. That was one of the first books that I didn't work on it, but I read it when I first came on board, and I just that's a feel good book too. Just people looking for something, from a culture standpoint, and and how he does things, and I enjoyed that.
That book was interesting because Chris is his company is the organisations that sets up all of the volunteerism or the volunteer-based rewards program. So rather than taking the team to Vegas to lose money at the tables, they'll go away and build a school or do a community centre volunteer type project. So Chris actually owns that company, but the guys that they worked with to create the book was one of their clients. And the reason that they wanted to write it was because their story, the client's story, really encapsulated the values that the organisation got from going on volunteer-based reward trips rather than just vacation type reward trips. So that's an interesting one for, as you listen to this, to think about. It's not even, like we said with the lead gen books, it doesn't necessarily have to be your specific story or your specific idea or your specific position that you're putting out there, but you're encapsulating the details or the ideas, you're bringing them together into one place that can help someone move their journey forward. The same with this, the story that's being told. If you have a feel for wanting to share a story that is more emotionally compelling or has more of a cultural component, it doesn't necessarily have to be entirely your own thing. The point can be made with someone else's stories, and if there's an opportunity to team up or joint venture or amplify someone else's story through a project that you want to initiate yourself, that's a fantastic way of capturing those details. I think about some of the popular kind of entrepreneurial type books, and Conversations with Millionaires is a huge book that was around in the, I want to say, maybe late 80s, early 90s, maybe. Time is might be getting confused on the time, but that book was entirely written based on conversations with other people. So leveraging someone else's the stories and examples that someone else have, but bringing them together into a framework, into a narrative that you want to orchestrate, is another great way of just a very slight variation on this type of thing that we're talking about. I think with spending so much time talking about lead generation books, because that is a lot of the focus of what we do, but it's definitely the 60 to 70%. It's not nowhere near 100%. And the other 30 to 40% is made up of all of these different types.
And it's I mean, from our standpoint, it's a nice change, but also I think sometimes people associate us just with those lead generation books, and we know that we've done so many more other things. These kind of books, the culture books and legacy books and stuff, but these are kind of a nice change up for us, from me, the person who reads all the books that leave the office. It's kind of a nice change, so. And
a little bit more engaging than talking about just financial numbers and choosing different plans.
Right. Well, listen, we're grateful for our financial books, but
it's nice to get some variety.
Bread and butter. Yes, exactly. So,
or include a few more anecdotes, not just facts, maybe.
Exactly.
Kind of do a nice blend of the two.
But you know what? That is like, okay, that's even in the lead generation books, like talking, like making it, I'm kind of going off somewhere else. We may talk about this another time, but we always say, and I say in content when they're talking to people, like if you can use not just an example, but like a story, like a real life story, in the book like that. It makes you want to continue reading, like if you're hearing about someone's real stories, things that happened to them. Yes, from an employee standpoint, it's, I think, so beneficial, but I think people also just, they're easier to read when you have some stuff that are just a little more,
and we talk all the time about the whole purpose of books in a funnel, whatever that funnel is being part of the process to get people to know, like, and trust you to the point that they want to take the next step with you, whether that's becoming an employee or becoming an engaged employee or being a customer or client. Having something that bridges that gap makes you, brings out your human side, gets people to be more, create more of a connection. Think about some of the complete change of subject or channel, but think about some of the popular YouTube channels that are out there. A lot of those are the vlog type channels where the majority of the compelling content is the fact that people know and understand the person that's on the other end of the camera. I mean, obviously easier to do that in video because it's very kind of visceral and in your face. But even when you think about podcasts, I mentioned that I some time ago kind of stopped listening to audiobooks just because podcasts had taken them over. The majority of podcasts that I listen to are either technology ones or political ones, or fitness ones. And across all of those three genres, it's almost less about the subject and more about the individuals and the fact that you've got a connection with people who are on the show.
That is so, I mean, like I was listening, you're saying like you're listening to like grown up podcasts, and I love that. And I'm listening to like fluffy, feel good, nonsense, because when I need to zone out, that's what I do. I listen to nonsense podcasts. But I feel like there is that connection, and yes, there's always something of benefit in there. I walk away with something, but it is true. It's almost like, oh, I'm gonna listen to my friend, today.
Right.
Like you have that, because there's gonna be some fun story that they're gonna tell, and and yes, hopefully I'll learn something from it. But yeah, so I've taken on a lot of podcasts. I have a whole list of, and there are some grown-up things in there that I should listen to. But sometimes you just need that, like, to veg out and zone out. And
yeah, I mean, I think the subject of the ones I listen to might sound more grown up. I don't know that the content is. Exactly. And I zone out just as well with those. Right. That anecdote and the personal connection thing, let's drill into that a little bit more then, because that is a good point that I didn't necessarily think about as we were talking about what to talk about on the show. I was running through on the flight on the way down yesterday. I was running through an outline for another 90-minute book that we're going to be releasing shortly. It's industry specific, and one of the examples. So the book is based on the book blueprint framework, the 8 mind steps to create the best opportunity in a book format, and the content side of things, the value-driven content mindset stage, talks about making sure that you answer the one question as the book is about as completely as possible, don't hold anything back, and really make a connection. And that making the connection, one of the bullet points that I've got to that I'd included to drill a little bit deeper on is this anecdote and example element. So having personal connections, personal stories, having things that illustrate the example in a real world way is beneficial for 2 reasons. One, it creates that connection, but 2, and the frame in which I was talking about it mainly, was the limiting the scope. So it's always a problem or always a challenge in a book to write something that is specific enough to be useful without overly caveating it or trying to come up with a watertight example that illustrates absolutely every point that you're trying to make, because otherwise you're going to end up with 100 pages just trying to highlight one particular point buried in a chapter somewhere. But stories and anecdotes are a great way of illustrating it without needing to get 100% of the way there, because if you're telling a story, particularly if it's a real story and not just an illustration, when you're telling a story, people don't expect that it's going to be the perfect analogy because you're retelling what actually happened, and obviously it's not going to be perfectly matched to the point that you're trying to make. So it gives you an amount of flexibility and leeway to make a point and reinforce it, but without worrying about being 100% true to the point or accurate to the point that you're trying to make, because everyone understands that this is a story and illustration, not the thing completely watertight and with every element covered. So I think including real life stories really has that benefit in addition to making that personal connection.
Absolutely, I agree with that. I think what you said about being actual, because sometimes we're so concerned with everything being perfect and said just right, and maybe factual, has everything been said, all the T's crossed, the I's dotted. With story, it sort of breaks down that formal thing, I guess, that formality, and people can kind of get into it, and they don't have to worry about it. It's their story, they're relaying it just as it happened, we're close to it. And I think it's definitely beneficial to the books, and to the reader as well.
A few of the podcasts that I listened to, one in particular, so 3 guys talking about tech subjects, all of them to a certain degree write for tech publications, either magazines or websites. And there's something that they've all said at various different times, is that the podcast medium, the fact that it's a conversation, does give them that flexibility that no one expects it to be. The expectations are different. No one expects it to be absolutely researched and you going away and collecting all the details and then coming back and giving a factual account of something that's been double checked 5 times. If you can double check something 5 times. Would that be double checked? Anyway, so it gives an amount of flexibility, and even though there is an expectation that the written word on a page in a book is more accurate, I think retelling a story within that changes people's context of how they're reading it. So just as you said, it's easier and a little less formal because people have those different expectations.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We've jumped back into lead gen type books. Let's go back to the culture type books. Yeah. The setup then, the job of work for doing them, I want to explore that a little bit more, because if it's something that as you're listening to it's resonating, you've kind of got an idea that you might want to share your story a little bit more, but thinking about how it fits into the bigger picture, there are a couple of ways that it really are beneficial, not just for the sake of creating it, for the sake of it being created, but actually lead towards a specific outcome. So the first thing is the first way is kind of like we said with the examples we used before. It's a great way of onboarding people and giving them their insights into the things that are really important, that not the nuts and bolts of how to do something or the employee handbook to tick the contractual boxes, but it's the softer side of the organization and where it sets up. And the other element that the other job of work that always springs to mind is with customers as well. So in a real world example, I can think of quite a few organizations, although interestingly they're often restaurants, that have created books like this, which often then turn into recipe books, or there's a recipe element of it as well, but it's a lot about the founder's story. So there's a couple of restaurant chains in the UK. There's Wagamama's and Carluccio's are the 2 that spring to mind. By the way, if you're ever in London and you want some great kind of Asian type food, go to Wagamama's because it's really good. I think there's one in New York as well. Just a side tip. Actually, there's another one as well, which is more of a street food type place called Oaxaca. If you ever go to London, or next time you visit London, on the South Bank by the Royal Festival Hall, there's a lot of restaurants down there, and Oaxaca and Wagamama's are both down there. So another tangent, but check this out. But both of those places
I love that.
have created books that it's really good. I think we're recording this. It's 12:23 when we're recording, so maybe the tip going forward is not to record at lunchtime because my mind is obviously my stomach's overriding my mind. Yeah, so back on track. So both of those organizations, all three of those organizations, have written something which is founder-based stories leading into recipe type books and that type of thing. But the ability to share something with a larger customer base, particularly if your organization has, I don't want to say any kind of customer base, but if there's definitely, and I don't really want to tie it to brand either, or brand loyalty or that type of thing, because it's slightly different than that. It's more kind of like brand family, for want of a better term. If you've got any if your engagement with the customers is less transactional and more relationship building, then this is a great opportunity to amplify that a little bit more. And as far as the job of work goes, then there's not only the amplification of the individual that's reading it, of the customer that you're trying to build a relationship with, but there's the opportunity to use that as a referral and recommendation type tool by sowing the seeds in the book or in the context in which you deliver the book to the person that this is something that should be shared with someone else, or we're bringing together a lot of customer stories that have come from referrals and testimonials and things that other people have been saying to kind of precede the expectation, that this is something that they could do as well. So the job of work of thinking about that book in a funnel, which is more on the referrals based side of things, is another great way to leverage and amplify and get that message out there, not only about what the culture of the organization is, but what the culture of our customer base is. Our customers typically refer, they typically write testimonials, they typically want to talk about our organization because we're building this family, and here's lots of stories about why that reinforces it. Now, that's obviously not something that you make up. It's very difficult to create something that's completely false that really backs up that message. But if your organization does have that, even if it's at a small level, but if that kind of customer family based sentiment resonates, then bringing it together into the pages of the book is a great way of kind of capturing that in one place. And then you can do things like there's that physical gift giving type approach of a book is a thing, an artifact that you can give to someone, and it has more resonance than a digital file or an email, or just saying thank you to someone. Writing a personalized note in the front cover of a book that talks about how important customers are, the amplification effect there is just huge.
Of course.
Yeah. Reinforces the relationship element.
Very true. Yeah.
The ones that we've got, and we've done so far. So the couple of examples that spring to mind: Robin's talking about their story and how the stores came to be in place. The Culture Shock book that we were talking about before, very much aimed at staff, and this is why our organisation is different. There was one that we were looking at just before we started the show that's just about to be completed, which is the what was it called? The California Cannabis Business.
The Cannabis Business Owner's Guide to Employees. Yeah,
right.
About the cannabis industry in California. But that's more like that's for people and anybody who's wanting to start up in the cannabis industry. So it's not just going to be for one organization. I think it's fantastic. Because it's a relatively new industry, and anybody who's looking at getting into that industry, this is a great guide. I've kind of read through it a little bit, and it's really a great guide, to how to get to from point A to point B, in the industry. It's industry specific, first of all, because it's just specifically about California, an employee guide, to starting up that business. But I think it's so needed. It's going to eventually, I think we'll see it in other states, him doing something similar with it.
Yeah. And that one, so Jonathan Wright in that is because that's their business. They help those
Mm-hmm.
types of organizations. But you
Right.
can imagine from the business owner's point of view, so they're getting into the business, the nature of that business, because of the baggage that comes along with it, and not only the fact that it's new and the regulations are changing and it's quite a fast moving field, but also the kind of social baggage and employee stereotypes that might go along with the people who work in that industry.
Right.
You can imagine a business owner there writing a book that is the guide to working at my organization, at this organization. So not generic, but very specific, and talking about cultural elements like, we work in this industry, but don't expect you to be stoned on the job. Don't expect you to be having a side business on your own. Take the steps necessary to reinforce that professional element of it, which for any other industry might be less of an issue because it doesn't come with that baggage. It doesn't come with the stereotypes around it. But writing a book which isn't so much of an employee guide as in here are the terms and conditions, but it's the employee guide to the softer side of it, the cultural side of it, the things that are important that aren't necessarily written on a piece of paper. That is an example of this type of book that immediately leaps out because it is something different. It's something relatively new. It's maybe something where the softer side of things, the less specific side of things, do need to be overcome because of the baggage that's around it. Mm-hmm. So that would be a fantastic opportunity to kind of merge these ideas together and think about the job of work of the book is to dial in these specific things. And the books that we're talking about, exactly the same with the lead gen ones. I mean, we're not talking about trying to get on a New York Times bestseller list. We're not talking about investing 30 grand into a project that takes 8 months to complete. We're talking about executing something for a couple of grand that takes tops a couple of months to get done. And the return on investment, I mean, the headache of finding staff and employing and the cost associated with that, you can burn tens of thousands very quickly just by churning 3 or 4 staff. So even if this book was something that was written for 5 people, the reality is the fact that it is printed in pages, it is a book, it gives it more credibility and standing than just giving them a PDF or expects them to read a document on the web about something. So the importance of it is reinforced. The fact that the business owner has given them something that has been written, it's a published book that's bound and has a barcode on the back of it, it looks more important, so carries more weight. It sets the expectation that the organization's more professional because they're going the extra step to do these things that other organizations wouldn't do, either because they didn't want to or they didn't listen to this podcast. They didn't know that they could do it. Right. But when you think about the job of work is employee retention and good employee retention, then I mean that's ticking a huge box and moving that goal forward in a significant way by creating something that, from a purely numbers point of view, I mean, we wouldn't typically talk about writing a book that would just had an audience of 5 people. Right. But this job of work, it means that it's, for some people, it will be a great way of achieving it. Actually, I say that we don't typically talk about creating a book that's got an audience of 5 people, but that bridges into a slight other topic, which is the family legacy type books.
Yeah.
So again, that's another kind of subgenre of ones that we've written several examples of. We don't talk about them very much because they're not promotable ones. They're not ones that we share. Mm-hmm. But the type of book is where someone who is the head of the family, for want of a better term, wants to communicate their story because they want to make sure that the generations to come understand where the family has come from. Typically, that's from a financial legacy perspective. That's usually where the conversation comes from. So where the wealth of the family is generated at in one generation, but then being passed down to another, and they want to share that message to kind of reinforce, hey, we weren't born with this. It came from hard work.
This is what we did. Yeah, exactly. You're benefiting from our hard work too. Yeah, exactly.
and then using it as a start to a conversation, because oftentimes it's difficult for families to talk about that type of thing, but using the book as the jumping off point for a conversation, and really that's the job of work. The job of work is getting to the point where they can have a conversation about things to kind of set the tone or make arrangements or have agreements before well, I mean, really, before someone dies.
Right.
Kind of soft way of saying it. Yeah. But having
but I mean, interesting. It does take something like it's a soft way to approach it too. Like, hey, this is what I've done. This is this book, and this is sort of why I've done it, because Granddad's not going to be here forever, Yeah. And then it kind of opens the door to other things, and that actually happened with one of our books. I remember, like. And I won't name names, but he said, "Oh, we've had more conversations." And this is somebody who had an illness, and he said it's really opened the whole conversation, and just about what's next, But what I love about it, and because the people that have done these books, obviously they have a history. They've had businesses for a significant amount of time, and they're older people. They're a different generation, and I have this fear that, these kids coming up now, and I'm going to start sounding old. Everything they have is saved, on social media. Like, that's how they do. There's not a photo book, I mean, and even me, and my kids are in their early 20s, like when I stopped putting photos and, going and printing them out and putting them, like, there's not even that kind of stuff, So everything, I mean, if they could go back and 20, 30 years and go through all my social media, they'd be able to pinpoint like what I had done, I guess, okay, well, she traveled and she ate at this restaurant and she, whatever, but there's not that solid.
There's a seemed lack of permanence about it, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, there was a MySpace, talking about tech podcast listening to, there was one of the news stories from last week. MySpace admitted that they'd lost all files from something like, these details aren't going to be correct, but something like 98 through to 2004, they were migrating some servers and the data was just gone. So for a couple of months, they were saying, there's a problem, we're restoring, bear with us. But they finally admitted last week that that information's gone completely. So the example they were given there is back in the heydays of MySpace, there were a number of bands where the only place where some of their music will exist is on something that is now disappeared because of a technical glitch. So a bit of a side there, but I take the point exactly that there isn't the same level of documentation of things as perhaps there was in the past. So this is a great opportunity to take the time just to make sure that some words and your words, it's not that this
your
is
words.
Yes, this isn't an archivist going back through and trying to piece together the various pieces of what might have happened in Betsy's life. This is your words actually documenting at least your view of what did happen.
And it's history, but like the sappy side of me is like, what a gift. What a gift that you're giving to your grandchildren or your great-grandchildren that you've never met. They can go through that, and they have such a gift to know, where their grandfather or great-grandfather started and how it all began, and, reading about, his life and how he created, what he did create or what have you. That's the sappy side of me that loves things like that, so it's historical and there's a purpose to it, but it's also a great thing to do for your family.
Yeah, you can imagine. So again, we're coming back to kind of on a couple of examples, what the job of work is, why would you want to do this? But I mean, a perfectly valid job of work is just, I want to capture these details. It doesn't have to do anything else. It's just, this is an opportunity to, at a point in time, answer these questions and have it documented in a way that the person whose stories they are can confirm that's an accurate representation and get it kind of printed on a page for the rest of the family to see going forwards. Even then, I think there's the opportunity to, going back to Chris's example, and that they orchestrated the book, but it was someone else's story that they were illustrating. The same applies to this. I'm pretty sure we've had one or two examples like this where it's actually been the children or grandchildren that have wanted to capture the have the stories captured, but then the interview as part of the process has been done with the older family member, and the aim then. Well, actually, didn't we have? This is a little bit sad, but didn't we have a story recently where we were rushing to try and get this done? Yeah. Actually, there's been two. Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? I mean, we're up at 500 or so books now, so it's always funny that the same 100 or so are kind of front and center in mind because they're the ones you think about all the time. But then when you start diving into a subject and start going deeper, all of the other ones that are below the surface that you forget about because they just pass through the system and they're kind of just one of the 500 that it's not until you start talking about, but they come up. But we've got two examples, and you were much closer to this than I was. But one of them was an example where, just as I was describing then, I think it was the son was trying to get the story from the parent before the parent. They were definitely getting older. I don't think there was anything particularly terminal, but they were definitely getting older. So that was one of the projects that was we were able to do. But there was another one, which is quite sad, that the person's friend, they had a terminal
wanted him to do the book. Yeah, they had both had the same terminal illness, and the friend really was he's still doing his own book, but he wanted his sick friend to sort of do his perspective as well. It was a legacy book, but it was also like, hey, you've been diagnosed with XYZ, and how do you handle it? And this is how my family handled it. And unfortunately, before we got to work with them, the gentleman passed away. And so now we're working on that book with the gentleman's, wife, and they're too young. They're not young, but I mean, they're young to me because they're in their 20s. So they're sons. So we're working with them on that to sort of, try to create sort of the memoir for the boys and for their future children, So yeah.
It's great that harder. Yeah, it is, and because it's relatively recent as well. I mean, this is in the last couple of months that this is going on, and it's surprising how close you get to people, even in just a couple of conversations. I mean, obviously nowhere near as close as the actual people involved, but even so, it's. I mean, that's the nice thing about working with a relatively small group of people is that we haven't got robots that are recording things and then just spitting something out at the end. Every person in the process is connected with everyone at the everyone that's at the other end of the process.
That's true.
Definite personal connections there made. Sorry, that took a bit of a turn there, but it does highlight the point that there is time's fleeting. So the ability to capture stuff and capture it before the opportunity disappears is it's a moment in time. And even if the job of work is just to have that memory captured, that's a perfectly valid job of work. We're talking all the time about, okay, what's the funnel and what's the return and what do you do beyond the book and all the things from a transactional point of view and in a financial funnel, but just as valid is the job of work of capturing that. Okay, so what? I think that probably covers it in a pretty good way. The different capturing the different types. It's not just about lead generation, although next week we're going to be back on that subject and we're going to be talking about it in detail again. The opportunity to get that story down, and the extra benefit that it has by adding that human element even to one of the lead generation books that we talk about. I'm glad that we talked about this today because it really is quite it's a
I think it's interesting. It's beneficial. I think that for people who have been following us for some time, we do always talk about the lead generation books, and there are other options out there. So if you're thinking about doing something, or you're thinking maybe we've planted a seed today, like, oh, this would be great for my organization. Because they're definitely beneficial. I think if you remember to add those stories and add the real life examples, I think your employees will definitely benefit. From that. So
and that's a good point. I mean, as we were saying, a couple of the other examples of the 500 plus that we've done now cropped up in conversation. But as you listen to this, if you've got an idea and it's not specifically something that we've talked about, then just reach out to us, and it's almost certainly something that we've done with someone or something very close. And yeah, reach out, ask us some questions, and we can see what we can bring together.
Definitely. Well, that was
okay.
Good.
Yeah, enjoyed that. Thanks for your time again today. This is going to be episode 76, so not too much in the way of show notes today apart from the transcript. So if you did want to have a scroll through that or catch up on anything specific that we talked about, then just head over to 90minutebooks.com/podcast. And as I say, this is going to be episode 76 and the transcript will be there. If this did spring an idea and it was something specific and you want to get started, then as always, just head over to the website and follow the get started links at 90minutebooks.com. And if you are thinking about something, as Betsy said, that's maybe slightly outside of what we talked about, it's probably very similar to things that we've done in the past. So just shoot us an email to support@90minutebooks.com and we'll be able to jump on a call and talk through your idea.
Awesome.
Okay, well, thanks for your time, Betsy. Thanks for listening, everyone. And we will catch you in the next one.
Great. Thanks, Stuart.
Cheers. Bye.